Hello and welcome to this morning's Talk at 10, our 16th episode of the programme. Today we're going to take a bit of a trip back in time to the credit crunch of 2008 to remind ourselves of how businesses coped with a contracting economy then and what insights this offers our business decisions today. To explore these themes, my panel today are Barry Bassett, Managing Director of VMI, Charles Purdy, Director of Smart Currency Exchange, Ken Ross, Managing Director at Now Communications, and I'm delighted to be joined by my predecessor, Frank Wingate, former Chief Executive at West London Business from 2004 to 15. Throughout the programme, my colleague Pim, as always, will be monitoring your questions, so please do keep them coming in on the live chat as well as via email. Now, a quick reminder, as always at this point in the programme, that the West London Business Support Helpline is there, ready to take your calls. No question, no challenge sort of is too great for our team, so do keep them stretched. The number to call 020 8607 2500 and the supporting website coronavirus.westlondon.com, of course. Thank you, as always, to Better Futures, our programme supporters. Better Futures is the Mayor of London's flagship programme to create a clean tech cluster in London. Now, if you're wondering how to apply for Better Futures, in order to be eligible, a quick reminder of some of the criteria. You need to be an SME, that's a business with up to 249 employees and a turnover under 50 million euros per annum. You need to have a London address. You need to have or be about to develop a clean technology. That's any product or service that has a good impact on the environment. And your business can't be a subsidiary or under the control of one or several enterprises. So if that sounds like you, please get in touch with amelia.grant@westlondon.com with a little bit more about your business and project, and the conversation can be taken from there. So, let's get down to business. On the programme today, we are going to be exploring with our panel, as always, a bit of a flavour from the panel of the current climate and their take on it. Then we're going to move into reflections and hopefully a few stories and anecdotes on the previous financial crisis and how businesses navigated the distress and then recovery phase back in 2008. And finally, we're going to sort of look forward and take stock as to some of the lessons that can be learned in the current COVID-19 pandemic. So lots to get through, as always, in the next hour. But first of all, I'd like to turn to the panel and Barry, perhaps, to kick us off, just to share with us a flavour of what the past few weeks have felt like for you and colleagues at VMI and how things have changed since the start of the lockdown. Barry. Are we getting audio from Barry? I'm not sure we are. Okay, Barry, we're going to have to come back to you with the unmuted
Hi.
Barry experience.
I apologise. Right, so we're a camera rental company, and in mid-March we had 7 concurrent 2-camera dramas all running. Suddenly, all of them returned. We've had nothing for the last 3 months, and then as of the beginning of June, things are starting to come back, and they're starting to come back in a slow but very deliberate manner. And actually, we're doing much better in both June and July than we were expecting. So actually, it is coming back. Everybody's meeting and talking every day. I'm on all of the boards of all of the different rental companies and the BSC, the British Society of Cinematography. Everyone is all talking. We're all very hopeful, and we're just monitoring how things are going. Early days.
So that sounds like really, really encouraging signs, and it's good to finally have some positive news coming through, Barry. And I assume that within your industry, a lot of attention being given to the practical realities of how to start producing TV and film in a safe and socially distanced way.
Absolutely. So everybody is creating their own white papers, their own risk assessment, their own ways of working. And the clients and the freelancers, there are 5 million freelancers in the UK, many of them in the TV industry. Everybody's very worried. So everybody is trying to work in a very responsible manner to try to make sure that this isn't going to repeat again. So yes, we're all sharing ideas and we're all doing so. Lots of in a collaborative effort. That's very important.
That's really encouraging to hear, as I know a lot of hard graft has sort of gone in over the past few months to work out how that safe restart happens. If I can turn to Ken, obviously beavering away at Now Communications in another part of West London's sort of creative sector. How has it felt for you over the past few weeks?
I think it's just felt like an experience that you can't forget, really. It struck very quickly. I think that we were getting prepared. I remember just before lockdown, we thought to ourselves, let's do a dummy run and let's all work from home and see how we cope with that for a week. And just exactly when we were about to start that, the lockdown did start. So we didn't actually get the dummy run. But most of all, I'm just really proud of the way that everybody's adapted and managed to thrive. It's been fantastic to watch a team that I suppose at the very beginning we could have all decided just to throw the towel in. You know, I think a lot of companies felt like that. They just really didn't quite know what to do. And there was an option to say, let's just wait and ride it out until it's over. But everybody kind of buckled down. We all got into this new way of working. We've done a fantastic job of adapting and learning how to work as a team in a remote way. And I suppose that's the thing I'm most proud of over the past couple of months. I must admit, it's starting to get a little bit tiresome now because we've done it non-stop for 3 months now. And I can see a place in the future when we create a hybrid of sometimes we're in the office and sometimes we're at home, but there's not a massive appetite to go back to the way things were before.
Yeah, no, it's that is a story that I think is sort of recurring and happening in many of our conversations. Any particular sort of tips and tricks that, you know, in terms of what's particularly helped your team kind of stay together and bond through this strange time?
I think you need a little bit more structure than you used to have in your daily routine. You know, you could come to work, it was 9:30, everybody knew the drill, and we would all have informal meetings, and that would just be the way of the work day. And now I think it's really important to have structured time. So we have a 9:30 call. It's not a long call, it's just a kind of, we call it a catch up or a stand up, just to make sure everybody knows what they're all doing and what blockers we may have in order to proceed. And then just keep connected over the course of the day. So structure would be one of those things. Make sure that you're having something regular in the diary that gets everybody together, not particularly for a real work reason, just for a kind of how are we all doing type of thing. And keeping in touch with the fact that people are going through a whole bunch of different experiences at the moment. So, you know, it's not really a 9:30 catch up to say, what are we all going to do today? That's included, but it's more of a catch up to say, how are we all feeling? Any problems, other things happening outside of work that may impact, and just be really flexible, because so many people have got so many other things to think about at the moment, and you never quite know what it is that might upset someone's work day. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. There's mental health problems that people have to consider. There's family. There's a whole, you know, piece at the moment where everybody is working from home, which means work, you know, the home becomes an office block from 9 to 5, and that puts a new stress on people. So just giving everybody that structure, I think, and giving everybody the opportunity to
Really helpful reflections, Ken, and reminds me that at 4:30 today, the West London business team gets together for our weekly social, which helps us check in as to how times are changing from week to week. Now, Charles. Another fantastic West London based brand, and you've got a sizable team. What's the past few weeks felt for you? Well, that's good to hear, and I think, like all of us, it's been a relief that Zoom and Microsoft Teams have generally held up so well through this period and coped with the enormous growth that they've had to grapple with. Now, I'm going to turn to Frank. I understand there may be some audio issues sort of currently facing the webcast, and our technician Joel, who's beavering away in the background, will be working to address that as quickly as possible. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn to Frank. As I said in our introductions, my predecessor as chief exec at West London Business, you obviously know the West London landscape incredibly well. I wonder what your take is on how and why West London has been impacted so significantly by the crisis, and what memories it's throwing up for you of 2008, Frank. Indeed, it's this sort of exactly what have been our strengths for so long have now sort of flipped to become our Achilles heel for a while. And I think we're going to bring up a slide now that just puts in sort of stark contrast the sort of the output decline that we've sort of been living through in the second quarter. I think Joel's going to hopefully bring this. Oh, okay. Okay, we've got very strange and rare behaviour with our virtual studio this morning. I understand that only I can be heard and that guests can't be. So we're going to have a brief pause now in the output. I have to say, the first time in 16 weeks that this has happened, whilst we reboot our virtual studio. Our guests can be heard as well as my links and commentaries. So bear with us. We'll be back in a minute or two. Okay, now I think we are live streaming again. That is certainly what the computer is indicating, and I hope that our viewers are going to give some quick feedback in the live chat window to confirm that the audio is coming through, not just from me, but from our guests. So I'm going to have one eye on the live chat window and one ear listening out for confirmation from Pim in the next few minutes that we are successfully getting our guests to air. In fact, I'm going to bring Frank back in just to enable us to test that that guest audio is working successfully. As we came off air, Frank, we were looking at a slide showing the 39% sort of economic contraction in Q2 affecting Northwest London boroughs. And I wonder whether you can just sort of share your reflections on why our West London economy has been hit so hard, Frank.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, I think it's because West London's very strengths have proved a weakness here, because a lot of 20% of London's GB is London. You've got a concentration of industries because of Heathrow, so travel and tourism around Heathrow. You have the manufacturing cluster around Park Royal, and then we've got all the creative industries spread around West London as well. So. And these are industries which have been hit by the COVID slowdown. So I think the fact that you've got a concentration of industry and businesses here in West London, have made things very difficult for the area. I don't know what it is these days, but in my day, I was quoted that West London provided 20% of London's economy and a £35 billion economy. I think it's even more than that now. So the very concentration has made things difficult, of course.
Well, at the moment, it feels like all is okay on the technology front. that's the signals that I seem to be getting through the reboot of the virtual studio. So, to summarise the contributions that our viewers will have missed in the opening remarks from our panel, Barry was letting us know that there are signs of hope now for the audio and sort of TV and screen sector, that his business is starting to motor again, which is very encouraging, and the COVID-19 sort of safe principles that have been developed over the past few weeks by the sector are now being put into practice on the ground, which is great to hear. Ken was sharing a little bit of the sort of the dynamics of sort of adjustment as a small business to everyone working from home, and was reflecting that now is possibly a point where the novelty is wearing off a little bit, but his team's been very disciplined in trying to make sure that everyone checks in at the start of each day, and just gets a sense of some of the external challenges as you kind of move your workplace into your home, and there's sort of perhaps a bit of a sense of no escape. And then finally, Charles shared the adjustments for smart currency exchange, and with a team of some 90 staff, what that adjustment has felt like, how Microsoft Teams and Zooms have been keeping the business powered up, There's been a slight dip, Charles was saying, but not too much of a dip in business, given all the external factors. So that's a rapid tour of what our viewers sort of missed in the first part of the program. But we're now going to move into our second sort of theme of the morning, and that is really just to sort of reflect back a little bit on 2008 and stories from the previous sort of financial crisis. And I'd like to turn to Charles first of all. I was reminded by Pim, our program researcher, that smart currency was incorporated in 2004. So I guess it would have been 4 years old as a business when the 2008 financial crisis hit. Casting your mind back to 2008, how did you keep trading through that period? What did it feel like, Charles?
Well, clearly it was very difficult. Thankfully, we were a lot smaller at that time. I think we were probably about 10 strong. And I think what we had to do there was pivot the business. Initially, we were principally private client business, and so what we did in 2008-9 was start to develop our corporate business, which obviously gave a second string to our bow. So that was a key factor, was we had to change our business model. Private client business still continued. I mean, even though the value of the pound collapsed, people quickly if they still want to buy a property overseas, they will buy a property overseas, even though it may be more expensive. So you just have to be willing to be adaptive, be willing to pivot very quickly.
And goodness, hasn't that word pivot now started to define or redefine business change in 2010? And in terms of exchange rates, I mean, I imagine the shock of some of the exchange rate volatility in what you're describing caused perhaps a bit of a pause back in 2008 on some activity. Do you find any similarities between the volatility then or now? Is it just a completely different episode that we're living through?
Well, strangely enough, there's still volatility in the market, but when you have people standing outside Northern Rock or Lehman Brothers going bust, then there's only one way that the sterling is going to do, and that's going to be to weaken very rapidly. What we've seen recently is, most of the market is people speculating. So 90% of the market is speculation, only 10% is physical delivery. But a lot of the speculators are very nervous to know which way sterling will go at this moment in time. So although the currencies still do move very quickly, they're not moving as quickly as they used to. And therefore we're seeing volatility, but not as extreme as it was. So it's a case of just being aware that currencies do move, and they can move very quickly if something really, truly dramatic happens to the UK economy sometime soon.
Fascinating. Now, for a slightly different perspective on 2008, I'm going to turn to Ken. Really, again, to kind of challenge you to kind of cast your mind back to what you witnessed back then, and perhaps some of the sort of dominant sort of trends or behaviours in marketing activity that played out back in 2008. Ken.
I think just post the financial crisis, the financial crisis was followed by an age of austerity, and I think that kind of created a culture where no one was spending very much at all. There was a culture of do not spend, save money. I think that might be different as we go forward now, because we've got to build, and spend our way out of recession type idea coming down the stream. But I think at that point, because everybody was looking to save money, and because all of those big, stressful points in our economy create opportunities for change, I think it was a great opportunity for marketing or digital marketing to sort of come out on its own. Because prior to that, we were doing an awful lot of things with traditional media. We were doing press advertising or billboards or physical stuff. And when the purse strings are reeled in a little bit, companies are much more keen to look at new emerging technology and digital ways to communicate. So I feel that it was a great opportunity to ramp up the activities that we did digitally, like how do we target people, how do we build audiences on Facebook or LinkedIn, or how do we communicate just to very specific people with a very specific message. So I think it turned out to be a good thing, but the whole age of austerity that kind of followed the financial crisis did mean that everybody was constantly looking at the buck that they were spending and constantly looking to get really clear analytics that said this money is being spent well. But that was, in essence, an opportunity because it created the ecosystem where we could all push forward our digital ambition, which we did, and kind of deliver for that new demand. So in many respects, it pushed the industry forward, I think.
So it sounds like a sort of a time of innovation then that perhaps has some parallels in that step change on digital that was driven, and certainly we're living through once again now. I'm going to bring in Frank. Again, testing your memory like other panelists. This is now 12 years ago. Hasn't time flown by at great speed? Just for a flavour of your memories of how members and other businesses in West London reacted to that 2008 crisis, and some of the behaviours and responses that you're reminded of now, Frank. We're not getting any audio through, or are we? I think we might be live to air. It could be gremlins. So as long as Frank's confident he's off mute, keep going, Frank.
Is that better now?
That is better? That is. Yes. Go for it.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. No, I was just saying. The financial crisis of 2008 was similar to this crisis in one sense, and that was it came as a bit of a shock and a surprise. I mean, no one saw it really coming, and the reaction, let's say, was twofold. The larger companies, the blue chips, could react pretty quickly. They had cash reserves, and they could cut costs fairly quickly. Unfortunately, through things like redundancies. With the SMEs company, as Ken was saying, suddenly you had no credit, they couldn't get paid, and they couldn't get money from the bank. There was a lot of fury actually against the banks. I remember, I remember pulling meetings together where we were trying to advise SMEs on their credit flow, their cash flow. And we would have the bankers along to try and explain what was happening. But of course, the bankers were in a difficult situation as well, because they were being pressured to be a lot more careful with their lending. And on the other hand, to get the QE money that was coming out of the Bank of England out to business. So, but it was a very difficult time, and it was a long slog, and it took 2 years really to get the economy back to the situation. And I fear that in many ways is worse, because I think it's not just a credit crunch, is it? I think businesses have actually had to stop trading. So I'm not quite sure whether Boris Johnson's bounce back is going to be so quick. I hope so, but I think it might be quite a long slog to get back to normal.
I think that marries up with a lot of the assessments that are happening at the moment, sort of in the background as West London starts to put together a detailed recovery plan, which in fact goes to our council leaders and the West London Economic Prosperity Board tomorrow morning for sign off. I suppose we have to hope that the Chancellor's interventions this time to try and make sure that the banks do keep lending. The bounce back loans, for example, provide some of that bridging finance that we can see from 2008 was so and is still so vital. Now I'm going to bring Barry in. Because I think your recently published book, which is very exciting, and I've been able to start to read. I haven't yet quite got to the end of it, but I have to say it was a gripping first two chapters. And goodness, Joel's brought it up on the screen, a reminder of full experience living and the website, which I think you're going to give us a flavour of shortly. But that. Your book sort of tells your personal story of how some years ago VMI had to survive a very extreme financial squeeze when you sort of first came into the family business. Can you describe what you were up against at that point in time, Barry?
Well, it wasn't at the start. It was quite a way through. But basically, we had a big burglary. We had an uninsured loss. And we were kept on the hook for £600,000 by an insurance company who shall remain nameless. And in the end, they didn't pay out. And we were left holding the baby. And it was remarkably difficult. We were on the edge of total financial ruin. We clawed our way back. It took us 12 years. And that's why I wrote the book, in order to tell the story. But from this, there are three defining points that I think are really, really important. And that is positivity. It's never as bad as you think. Always look on the bright side. I had a skiing injury some years ago, having to give up sport for a year. What did I do? I gave up. I took up the saxophone. That's the kind of thing. Within this lockdown, I decided that I was going to write a book. So the second point is happiness. There's 650,000 hours in the average life in a man's life. It's a bit more now, actually, which is really good. But to live to 1 million hours, you have to live to 114 and a half. Okay, you're not going to do that. So always make the most of every single time and every single moment that you possibly can. The third one is never give up. All right, and everybody always said that what we really have to do is we have to be very creative and doing things. That's fine. We're all doing that at the moment. Just like with Charles and his distance, his staff, we're all spread around. And we also have set up all of my rental desk guys all to be on there to work from home, and it works really, really well. We've got to communicate with our clients in different ways. So that's really important. So we just do all of that and then try and claw back. And I do a lot of cycling and fundraising, and I tell people about my story. And it would take quite a long time, because there are a lot of twists and turns, and it would take the best part of an hour to go through it.
Well, so I'm going to cut you off for a moment there, Barry. In a moment, I'm thinking you're going to bring up your website again, just to give us a quick flavour of what's to be found there. But I want to probe you more on that on the 3 months after that kind of crisis hit the family business. You've sort of talked about the principles and the mindset that you had to adapt, but faced with £600,000 that you weren't getting in from the insurers, and a short time window. How did you turn it round?
Okay, well, first of all, we had to shrink. So at the time, the size that we shrank to, that was about half a year's revenue at the time. It was awful, absolutely awful. So our time horizon that we were looking at was surviving 3 months. We would only look 3 months. If we could just survive until September, then actually that would be really good. And then we'd be juggling money from VAT, etc. And then September would come, and then we'd be looking 3 months further until January. And then by the time we got to Easter, we then expanded to look at 6 months, all the while just little steps. And we were all working together. It was just like in gambling terms, all in. We couldn't fail. And actually not being able to fail really helped us in some ways, but we refused to give up, and we didn't share the bad news with all of our customers. But in the same way that the finance companies, they wanted all of their security with mortgages and collateral, etc. We thought, well, listen, if we're going to be paying 16% interest to these banks, let's actually share that 16% with our friends and family and offer exactly the same security. So that was how we started to think about new original ways in order to change the rules, in order to help us, in order to succeed. And then eventually liquidity improved and business improved. We still had further issues. We kept getting burgled, and our insurance history record went out the window. At one stage, we were almost uninsurable. So, but we continued to find ways to get through. And in a business,
that gives real colour, I think, to the situation, and the sort of fleet of footness and determination you describe is I'm sure paralleled in lots of businesses across West London over the past few months. Can I invite you now very quickly to bring up on screen your website, Barry, because I think if I'm right, I think Joel, we're going to go live to Barry's computer, and I think you were telling me yesterday, Barry, that your book's available in Kindle, printed, and audiobook formats. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, it is. All of those 3 versions are there, and it was actually the cover was designed by my son, and all of the images that are also inside it, and all the pictures that come from the book are also on there too. Oh, this isn't actually working here. It's taking a little bit of time. So all of these, it's all available on Amazon. But the best place to find it and to see everything that is there is just to go to fullexperiencedliving.com. And there you can see the spoken version as well.
Wonderful. And as I said, a very, very readable and accessible opening to the book, which I'm looking forward to turning back to.
Also, if you wanted, you can also learn how to bake and how to make perfect coffee as well. So that's all part of it too. All a little bit of fun.
Fantastic. Now I'm going to turn to my colleague Pim for a bit of variety, but also hopefully a question from one of our viewers, either from live chat or email. Over to you, Pim.
Hi, Andrew. Yes, we've had a question come in from email that says, if the economic situation today is similar to that of 2008, are the solutions likely to be the same, or are there additional revenue generation strategies that need to be devised considering the ongoing pandemic?
So I wonder whether we bring Charles in on that in terms of the challenge of finding new additional revenue strategies at this point in time. Has that been something that your team has been exploring?
Very much so. I think, again, we have to accept that it's been difficult for people on a private client to buy overseas. So we've been looking at the high net worth market, for example, to see if we can develop our relationships and opportunities there. Similarly, on the corporate side, we've been looking at different verticals, some of which are doing better than others at this moment in time. So you always have to be active and looking for new opportunities. So we're still sticking to our core business, which is changing money and helping people manage risk. But you have to be proactive and looking for different areas and different opportunities.
Interesting, and I think that question and your reflections, Charles, sort of segue us rather neatly into the last part of today's programme. Really kind of trying to tease out some of the lessons that we can learn from 2008 for today's COVID-19 panic and our sort of rebuilding efforts. And I'd like to bring Ken in, really sort of pick you up on your earlier point around how the sort of market focus shifted to return on investment and the absolute importance of being able to evidence the impact of your marketing spend. I mean, I imagine the response of some businesses in the current crisis could be just to slash their marketing budget entirely. I mean, Is that something that you'd recognise or endorse?
I recognise it, and in a way I even endorse it, because it's so obvious that, okay, when there's a recession on, people look to pull in the purse strings a little bit, and they look to see where they can take cuts. And when there's a recession, when there's a crisis of this scale, when people don't literally know if they're going to survive, tomorrow and the day after, then, marketing for the future might not seem like the most important thing to do. But obviously, there's lots of data, and as a marketer, I would refer back to data that says it's the best time to spend on marketing. But that doesn't really matter, because if you've literally not got the cash or the confidence, you're just not going to spend on it. So I think for us, what we've tended to do is just try to reinvent the offer that we give to our clients at this point, and to new customers, and that seems to be working. I think at the very beginning of this process, you saw a huge opportunity, because there was a massive propensity for change. And as soon as you see that, you start asking people. And I think as soon as you start asking people what they want, you start to develop really good propositions for that market very quickly. So our first move, I suppose, was to go out to the market and say, look, to be honest, things are not looking great. I guess you've got one of two choices. You're either going to choose to throw in the towel, or you're going to choose to stay in business. And if you choose to stay in business, then you have to do something. What would you want to do, given that marketing has to have some role in your future prosperity? So what exactly would it be that you wanted to do? And when we asked that question to our audience, they came back really and they said, well, yeah, we do understand the value of marketing. We're not super confident that we want to spend a whole, budget that we might have been happy to sign off before the crisis. We don't want a year plan. We don't want you to come back with what we're going to do in the next 6 months or the next year, or how things are going to change. We're not confident to know that we ourselves are going to survive for the next 6 months. So don't give us that. Tell us what the next step is that we can possibly make through marketing that will take us one step forward in a very, very difficult climate. And we just really reinvented the way that we sell marketing to our clients and to our prospects at the moment. And we're really just focusing on splitting up the marketing problem and letting people address that problem one step at a time. And that seems to be something that really resonates with people, and they really respond well to that. We're not going in saying, sign up for a 6-month retainer or a 3-month retainer or whatever. We're going in and we're saying, what's your biggest problem when it comes to communicating your product and services? Do you have products and services that can really prosper in this market? Are they things that are good for people who are substantially working from home at the moment? Are they tech-based solutions that will help the new normal, if you like? If they are, what do you want to do? And primarily, those people do want to do something, and they want to leverage the opportunity, because they can see an opportunity. They're balancing the opportunity, I think, and confidence together, and thinking, okay, I want to go forward. I don't want to throw the kitchen sink at it, but I want to do something. What would you recommend that I do? And we're really happy with that, because it gives us a great communication with new people that we're able to talk to. And that's really how we've pulled through in the past 3 months, I suppose, just by splitting down, breaking the problem down and addressing the most important marketing challenge that any business has got at any given time, in a very clear and concise way, so that the client can see, here's your problem, here's what we're going to do about that problem, and when we've done it, this is the difference that you're going to notice. And we'll give them those analytics that deliver the evidence that says that's the change that you can now see. And when people are given that kind of an opportunity, they choose to repeat it. They choose to do the next thing. And I really like that as a strategy, because it's kind of at the heart of what we do. We're an agile marketing company, and we love to address things in small, biteable, chunks.
So some interesting parallels there in with Barry's reflections on the importance of your client's mindset and making that positive choice to start with, that we're staying in business, we're going to get on with it, but then also, you know, that shortened time horizon, and that as you know, the uncertainty that has sort of enveloped us all has demanded you in supporting your clients to again focus on the here and now.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've done really well just by listening. You know, It's not a good time to sell. If marketing's not a one-way process. You don't push product and services out. You need to communicate. It's backwards and forwards. So now for marketing, it's a great time to listen. Ask your clients what they're thinking, what their worries are, what they're using your product for, what they think they need to use your product for in the future, because the world has changed. Keep asking them questions, and the solutions will evolve. They'll come to you very quickly. It's a great time to listen rather than to sell.
Thank you. Now I'm going to bring Frank in again, sort of testing your memory to sort of make that link from 2008, sort of back to the sort of present. What stays with you in terms of particularly important things for businesses to be doing when planning their recovery now, Frank?
Well, it's very interesting listening to him saying. Interestingly, in 2008, 2010, you got a big impetus towards saving costs on property and office space, normal office space to share desking. This time round, there's a further impetus to save costs on office, and because of the use of digital means, you've got to move from share desking to home desking. So that it's pushed forward trends it's given momentum and impetus to changes that may have happened more slowly. And the second impetus and push, of course, is to online activity, because 2008, 2010, as far as I remember, it gave quite a big push towards online marketing, or bigger push towards using social media and online marketing. And again, I think, as Ken's been saying, people have got to rethink how to market this time round. And I think one of the key words is personalizing marketing, using social media and personalizing. But Ken's given us a good explanation of that. I think business simply this time round going to have to get used to a different world again. I don't think it will go back totally to where we were. I think things will change. One sort of big difference, though, I think this time round is that money is cheap at the moment. There is credit there. We have a government which is promising us a Rooseveltian New Deal. That's a bit grand. I don't think that'll happen, but at least it's spending. Whereas in 2010, the reaction of the government was austerity, which put a dampener on growth. So hopefully, in some ways, companies have a little more opportunity to hold of it and get hold of money at a reasonable cost. But I think the main thing, as always with businesses, what they'll have to do, assuming they want to keep in business, is got to plan and not just assume things will be the same. I mean, think of retail, for example. The retail businesses which we see crashing around us are those that did not adapt to the online world. So I think you've just got to recognise what's happening, and companies, how large or small, just need to plan ahead and think with a new world and a new situation.
Absolutely. And I think one of the themes that's been coming through in many conversations over the past few weeks and months is this idea of building back better. And I think beyond that, even, there's now a conversation around how do we build back greener. And I'd like to on that theme of sort of environmental sustainability, which kind of looms over us with the climate crisis. I'd like to bring Barry back in, because I know you've been doing work recently with Project Albert that sort of focuses on supporting sort of screen and sort of TV sort of sector businesses on that environmental sustainability journey. What's that been like, and I think you've been experimenting with plastics, if I'm right.
Yeah, so a group of us decided that we wanted to improve our green credentials, and we got together and worked out what to do. And the way that TV works is we have and we use plastic in order to wrap our cables in, because cables are very expensive. We want to make sure that they're okay. The one on the right here is regular PVC. That's what we all have used, and we were experimenting. I created these particular biodegradable bags. I investigated, and these were the bags that I had printed, and I was told that the EPI Global was really good, the right kind of stuff. The company that we bought them from, they gave me this picture, which looked fantastic, and I thought, okay, that's great. And we experimented with various different types, and then I thought I would do my own test. So I put 2 bags together in my garden, and I left them for 8 months. And after 8 months, this is what it was yesterday, with biodegradable one on the left. This is highly non-scientific. It's just been left in my garden. You can see that this one is still very, very thick. The color has bleached a little bit, but there's definite holes and definite creases here. During the winter, there was hardly any change from there. In the summer, there's been a big change. Now that's plastic, and there's been a lot of bad press about plastic. So the other thing that we also decided to do is instead of putting them in plastic, let's actually wrap them up in paper labels. So we did this, put them in printed recycled paper, and this is really working. And we share the best practice of everything that we're doing with our entire industry, and everybody has been adopting, and I've shared the design and the size of that. So people have been doing that, and it's been working really. Is just like we were doing with with sharing best practice about how to recover and how to share safe working practices. We've all been working together with a common goal, and other than the really big companies who haven't seemed to be too interested, we have been working collectively because we agree this is what we want to do.
It's a fantastic sort of practical example of sort of action to address the plastics sort of challenge that we face. And
you mentioned that Albert now recognised all of us as being sustainable and responsible suppliers. That's just good too. That's really exciting, and I'd like to also on the same sort of point around environmental sustainability bring Ken back in briefly, just for your take on how the landscape is shifting, because I know you have quite a lot of sort of clean tech, green tech businesses in your client base. What's happening out there at the moment, do you think?
Well, I think probably that would be the one part of our business. If we operate in 3 kind of sectors, I suppose, and green tech would be one of them. That for us, that would be the one that has slowed down most significantly since the start of this this pandemic or this lockdown. Most of our clients are doing innovative new technologies that are kind of cutting edge. So they're going into large installations, new builds in London, or big office buildings, or new next development cars and that kind of thing. And all of that manufacturing thing kind of stopped for quite a long time. And that was felt very quickly, I think, in the green sector that we cater for. Okay, there's quite a lot of domestic things going on at the moment. There's a number of people who've decided to green up their home or put solar panels on the roofs or whatever. And that's propping some things up. But for the most part, the big installations, the big projects that were really storming through before this lockdown started, these have kind of taken a backward, they've moved backwards a little bit. But I think that's about to change because, it's been 3 months, everybody's had a shock. But, the news that the government's looking to build and spend out of this recession kind of tees everything up and they also want to do this in a more green and eco-sensitive way. These are the things that the government is saying at the moment. You would imagine that as soon as the economy does open up, all these opportunities come back with some real rigor, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and that echoes a lot of conversations we've been having in the property sector. That, you know, whilst I suppose going live on some sites has been put on pause, there is a lot of work kind of being teed up, ready to kind of press go sort of fairly quickly. But also, I have to say, a lot of construction sites that have kept on going, just sort of applying COVID-19 safe principles, which has again been good to see and very important to keep the economy ticking over. Now, I'm going to turn one last time to my colleague Pim for a question to the panel. So over to you, Pim.
Question that's just come in from a viewer, perhaps to Frank. What are your thoughts on Brexit also being a complicating factor in any recovery as well as the pandemic?
Sorry, Pim, can you repeat that? It broke up a little bit.
Sure. It's what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on Brexit also being a complicating factor in any recovery as well as the pandemic?
Well, I think Brexit was a bad idea, but so we have to deal with it. I think it'll make things more difficult. Of course, it'll depend on what kind of a deal the government actually gets with the EU. They're talking hardball at the moment. I suspect there'll be some kind of compromise. I hope there won't be a no deal. If there's a no deal, it will have a worse impact on the British economy. I mean, even the government's own predictions thought there'd be a 7% on GDP. With a no deal, that is, and even with a deal, there'll be a negative impact. So I just hope the government will be sensible and reach as good a compromise as possible. So Brexit the negative effects of Brexit minimized.
So as we come to the top of the hour, time always goes far too quickly. I'd like to just bring in one last time, Charles, for your reflections too on that Brexit question, and perhaps particularly any sort of sense of how companies that are already kind of struggling with COVID-19 might want to manage some of the associated currency risks over the months ahead.
Well, I think the key thing to realise is, you know, sterling has been weakening slowly because of the fear of a no deal exit. So again, I think you have to take, manage your risk. There's plenty of solutions to manage your risk over the short, medium, and long term with currency. I think the key thing about that is that then you're in control. Rather than the markets affecting your margins and your ability to do business, you are in control. So that's what I would say is, look for a solution to manage that currency risk.
And your team, of course, the Smart Currency Business, always just a phone call or email away to get into the nitty-gritty of some of the tactics to deploy to manage that risk, of course.
Very much so.
I have to say, it's a very friendly bunch of colleagues you have, who are always good to bounce ideas around with. Now, our hour is unfortunately up. It has been quite a roller coaster this morning. So a huge thank you to all of you that have bared with us through those rare technical gremlins getting into our virtual studio platform. Thank you to our production team, Pim and Janelle at West London Business and Joel at Revolution Audio. But particularly a thank you this morning to our guests, Barry Bassett, Managing Director at VMI, Charles Purdy, Director at Smart Currency Exchange, Ken Ross, Managing Director of Now Communications, and Frank Wingate, former Chief Exec here at West London Business. As always, continue to share your thoughts with us and visit coronavirus.westlondon.com for the latest information and support. To speak to a human being about your concerns, don't hesitate to call 020 8607 2500. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, please click on the button below the video stream to stay informed and show your support for our work. Talk at 10 takes a 1 week break, so diarise Thursday the 16th of July at 10 a.m. for our next episode, when we'll be taking a look at inclusive reskilling and upskilling of West London's diverse workforce. Next week, look out for our monthly leaders briefing with updates from West London, Park Royal and the Great West Creative Enterprise Zone. Until then, as always, we wish you, your friends, family and colleagues good health, and please maintain social distancing wherever possible to stay safe.